Welcome, listeners, to the Traveler Chronicles, where the enchanting world of Extrayus comes to life. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your guide through the pivotal scenes in our thrilling Dungeons & Dragons homebrew campaign. Join us as we embark on adventures with the Travelers, a diverse group of heroes, each with their own unique reason for traveling the world. Together we'll explore the rich lore and vibrant landscapes of Extrayus, filled with magic, mystery, and unforgettable moments. And don't miss out on our special segment, Traveler's Tidings with Luna, where reporter Luna, played by my wonderful wife, DNDWife, interviews intriguing characters from our world, bringing their stories to life in delightful, immersive conversations. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon master seeking inspiration or a newcomer eager to dive into a fantastical journey, the Traveler Chronicles has something for everyone. So grab your gear and prepare for adventure. The world of Extrayus awaits. Welcome back, fellow adventurers, to the Traveler Chronicles. I'm your host, DM Eguile, here to take you deeper into the ever-unfolding saga of our homebrewed Dungeons & Dragons campaign set in the vibrant world of Extrayus.
And I'm DNDWife, your co-host and curious player, ready to explore tonight's tale of intrigue, spectacle, and maybe a little chaos. We're diving back into the bustling holy city of Arnoka, where cultures collide and the unexpected is always just around the corner.
Tonight, we're spotlighting the return of the charismatic bard, Miguel the Magnificent. We'll follow once again Captain V as he stumbles upon the grand celebration of the Elefolk and navigates their lavish party to uncover critical information.
We'll also explore the art of creating DM NPCs, what makes them tick, how they enhance the story, and unique challenges they bring to the table. Plus, Luna's got an exclusive interview with DM Eguile himself with a few questions for the Dungeon Master.
So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and join us as we unravel the magic and mischief of tonight's adventure. Don't forget to like, review, subscribe to support our podcast. Obviously, we've been going over these last couple of episodes, mostly about kind of all the shenanigans that kind of occurred in Arnoka. And as I imagine with most people's campaigns, it's kind of hard to keep all of them into kind of chronological order. And we've tried. We record, we write, and it's still so hard to keep those important moments.
And sometimes the scenes can get jumbled in our heads too.
Right. So it becomes more of, that's why we always like to focus on these important scenes. Because sometimes it's not the session that stuck with you, but particular events or scenes.
Things that happen.
Everyone always has their favorite D20 moment or natural 1 moment.
Right.
Or D20, natural 20. I'm a DM, people. But I think tonight's scene, and though it kind of goes in a weird order, because as we've discussed in the previous one with Drexla and Captain V coming under attack, we failed to mention a story kind of that occurs a little bit mixed in there. And one is their kind of discovery of not only of a returning NPC that I imagine the players didn't wish to return, but also seeing kind of the unique other side of the Mirren tribes. And whereas most have been seen as, squalor and living on the bare minimum, the entire opposite is being seen with the Elefolk.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like tonight's theme is usually the challenges and rewards of creating and managing DM NPCs.
Yeah, I really feel like it's that scene where you've okay, we've gotten rid of this annoying person, we're good, and it's been 4 or 5 sessions, so you're oh, okay, they're gone.
Yeah,
they haven't shown back up.
Yeah.
And then just when you let your guard down, you start to hear something, and then it's it's going to be him again, isn't it? It's
he's right behind me, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's okay, here we go. But really, it does show kind of, I think, more to the inner workings that's going on behind the scenes that a lot of DMs like myself kind of struggle with, of when is the right time to put in a character, or when is it a time for them maybe to just kind of bow out and step out of the story without just essentially ghosting the party.
It's like directing a movie or a TV show in real time almost.
Yeah, and I feel like it comes down into 2 very simple facets. And the way I put it is that there are kind of 2 essential NPCs. Yeah. Right? So there's the regular NPC. Just like that weird TikTok trend. These are just your answers with, yeah, I'll give you a good price.
They have set responses.
Right, a room is 5 gold.
They're not very complicated.
Hold your horse.
Yeah.
Here's the news. They just fill specific roles, right? They're not really meant to, it's always kind of that running joke, right? When like a player will run into like, oh, okay, I want to see someone. Okay, well, there's an old lady. Okay, what's her name? It's like, okay, you make up a name, pretty common.
Yeah.
And then they want to know this entire character's backstory. And it's like, okay, she's a little old, because not every character out there, because obviously if a DM is like making all of this information.
Right, that is so tough.
It's next to impossible. So what you'll do, and what I like to do, is the DM NPC, right? So they're kind of more of a character that's obviously
special.
Right. They're a little more intricate to the story. They're obviously more free thinking.
They've got personality.
Yeah, and it might not necessarily be an impact. So it's not necessarily like, oh, they're a good or a bad guy. Just more of they're meant to be more of an impact. They might have more information than just the paladins are that way and points in a direction.
Because we've had DM NPCs that are all sorts of different things. Vendors. Major people in the government, all sorts of DM,
right?
NPCs.
And we've had, right. Like obviously we've had various like Gregs, Terry. I'm not the most skilled at naming, and I hate it too because I'm trying to be more eclectic.
We're trying with this new homebrew,
right? So sometimes I come up with some good ones, but it is that where finally, sometimes when they have kind of more keyed up names, but there are other times where we've had characters, like Gigi, right? Which was who ran another store that was called Gigi's, but it was the Glorious Gentleman, and it was so good because this person was just a vendor, and it went from being just kind of a one-shot character that was supposed to be just kind of more flair and kind of this like
just
kind of
fun addition,
right? A beacon in a very dark time in the campaign, and when the party really kind of glammed on and clicked onto that character, they inadvertently created something more than what originally was planned for that NPC, right? And so Gigi became this bigger thing, ended up like co-opting making clothing for the characters.
She became our personal like designer, our fashion designer.
And so it became now, we look back from campaign 1 and it's like, oh my God, this person is such this big deal now to the characters. And then you have examples of like specific DM NPCs like Growlmore. And
because Gigi was just a vendor, but
Growlmore was like a character, and a really big, I think, indicator that I like to say on DM NPCs these are usually also NPCs that travel with the party.
Yeah,
and not
they
just
be a
like
part of the group,
and not just like take this shopkeep to the next village
to
protect him,
or
so he doesn't
here
get
you
hurt.
Go, you're the bag person, right?
You're delivering cargo, and so it's kind of nice to not have to worry about that. But these characters kind of have to be more flushed out. They tend to have abilities and skills and all these other kind of stuff, and so like we had Growlmore, and like by the end of the story, Growlmore marries another player.
He was part of our little found family.
Has a breakdown of faith, a new religion.
He followed us into the second campaign. It was awesome.
So it really showed. But in those instances, that's kind of an opportunity, really, for me to kind of be that player every now and then. Now, obviously, that's always a tough point because you don't want to be a player
too much.
Well, being a player, I mean, if you're a DM, it's kind of cheating. I know everything that's going on. So it's always just more of a way of kind of balancing your involvement to both help raise up the players and give them stepping stones or opportunities to gain information, but also not be kind of, well, I'm the main character too,
without changing too much.
Right. And so, and that's what's kind of always what we've seen through some, but then obviously it can have negatively sometimes, and in the context of like Miguel, campaign 3's Miguel. I love Miguel the Magnificent. He enters into the stage trying to, wow and dazzle, thinking he's arriving at a rock show, but it didn't. given the way that the players kind of ended up interacting. Now, whether or not it's because he's a kobold or because people just hate the sounds that kobolds make, he wasn't taken too fondly.
He has a very shrill voice, and he is kind of a little food piggy, so he tries to forage for anything he can get his hands on.
And so I think like with that initial interaction, it really kind of shows how like your initial plan with a character can very much shift.
Absolutely.
Just based on the introduction. Whereas here I'm going, okay, this is going to be, he's just like another victim with all of them. He's just going to get introduced. And then it isn't even like 20 minutes in that it's essentially the party has decided that, nope, we're going to only have one cute little cuddly creature and we pick Bogbean.
We can't have any other cuddly creatures.
Out the window. And so it also created this kind of interesting change for me because it also was like, oh, okay, they don't really like him.
Right?
And now he's been horribly maimed in a universe where they don't understand how bad that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like taking his hands would have been better for him,
right?
in his mind.
Taking his legs, But it is kind of interesting to see how that shift and then having to kind of rework a character, that you might have had an original plan for, but obviously now that they're not part of the plan, you don't want to necessarily then try to like shoehorn them in.
Yeah, right. Because then it feels forced, and
it's like
nobody wants that.
It's like, oh, here's your little brother. You got to always take him with you because no matter what, there's no choice.
It's like, okay.
So I feel like that's always a really funny kind of way, but it's also kind of tough because I know for you players, it's hard to know. Like, okay, kobold bard who's very dumb and is very much had been conned. Sometimes you guys think, hey, open season.
Right, well, because it's different, right? Some NPCs, like Growlmore, for example, was able to help our campaign, and it was kind of a really helpful sort of NPC, but Miguel was... not to be mean, but he was a little annoying. He got on people's nerves. I think it was just because of the personality that he had to have. Because he was a kobold. That was who he was. But it certainly made it easier, I think, to choose Bogbean over him when their whole rivalry started.
Yeah, and the rival of the small.
So I think that's kind of the point, right? It's not obvious always to us as the players which NPCs that you present to us are essential or just simply creating are just there for flavor. So it gives us this like interesting guessing game during the campaign to be like, okay, who's important and who's not, and sometimes we don't get it right. Sometimes we end up mistaking the one who is important as someone that we can just be like, who cares, go away.
Yeah, right.
So that's always tough. But I like characters like Miguel, even though we might not necessarily want them with us. I think that they always enhance the storytelling. And in fact, because he's become a sort of a small antagonist to us, it's given it this sense of competition and like one-upmanship almost.
Yeah, he's your Team Rocket now.
A little bit. A little bit.
Yeah, he just needed his own Jesse and Meowth.
Yep, and he's good to go.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe maybe in the future there's more for him.
Yeah, he's got this.
I mean, for me, I know that like obviously there's certain easy ways, and for a lot of us, like we're big Rick and Morty fans. So usually, if I happen to either mistakenly or on purpose name an NPC Jerry, I just know that you guys will utterly ruin however you can that character's whole world life. I feel like Jeritus should be like my big bad BBEG and just be like all the revenge for all the Jerrys. For every Jerry you mess with, he gets more powerful.
Yeah, well, Jerrys are always the ones who screw things up and are always messing up in the background, so we just kind of blame all the negative stuff on Jerry.
Right. So the scene we're looking at tonight is kind of that big reveal, and I that's why this one really stuck out, and it's kind of mixed into a bunch of the other scenes, because obviously as a DM, it's so hard to keep all these scenes in place. Yeah. But for me, the biggest idea for this scene and why it fits in is it kind of fits into that narrative of having Captain V going out and exploring. And if he had tuned into a few episodes ago, I, unfortunately, the skilled DM that I am, hadn't really given him the information that I thought he had. So he had not any of the printouts. Oopsie. So he was flying blind, literally. And so because of this, he is trying to go out and explore more. But it creates this cool, interesting perspective because we have a new player with no information and a bunch of veteran players who are just chomping at the bit to get any kind of information that wouldn't be considered metagaming.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, the great thing about when new players and other kind of events happen with smaller groups are, my party loves to split the party.
Yeah, we
by
love
the
it.
way, in all forms. There was even jokes of six parties of one.
All of us going off individually.
That's how bad my party, my table likes to split their party.
Yeah, we're bad.
But by seeing this, there's that kind of perspective of people who are watching a scene, learning of events, but having no real way to actually express or act on those.
It's so frustrating because we're just sitting there like, please say something. Please say something so we can interject and actually be able to say it without metagaming me.
And so on one of these nights where poor Captain V is trying to scrounge up any kind of information with his, trusty pirate fairy lieutenant as his flying over his shoulder at all times. They happened to kind of come across a very interesting scene while looking to gather more information. Following signs of music and kind of people and loud noise.
A much louder party than around.
Right, where there's actually like music and gathering and sound, whereas most of the outside ring is kind of like a campground at Yosemite where there's crackling fires.
There might be some music, but it's not loud or rambunctious.
It's not the same, but they come upon this large kind of tent enclosure and just filled with what is probably over 100 of these giant 4 or 5 ton large elefolk, right? And these large creatures. And seeing kind of first this kind of big split, right? So this entire time, it's been very slim picking. A lot of the Mirrans suffer, whether it's from drought or lack of food. So each of them have various, issues in foreign invaders. But this is entirely different, as what they witness is just, lavish
Opulence.
amounts of food and resources, to the point where they are dancing around and celebrating and getting so inebriated that most of the food is just ending up on the floor.
Yep, and they don't care.
And being trampled under their weight and being kind of mashed into the mud as they continue to dance and kind of show off to all of this kind of information. And the biggest thing that really stood out to me in this scene was that it was kind of to show the kind of size, is that as V and Drexla were trying to make their way through the party, because they could see that there was somebody sitting on this like giant throne in the back of the party, and they're trying to make their way back. And it's one of those parts where we're still early into the story, so it didn't really start coming up until later. And at first it's V kind of going through and making his way through, and and it's like, he's a lizard folk, something might happen. Oh no. But this was that first time with like Drexla again being the small creature, where I had to kind of preference to her, where it's like, hey,
be careful.
You're going to actually get crushed.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you don't mess up these throws. To where the player was kind of taking it as very, being very reluctant to kind of make their way through this party, because at any moment, especially if they rolled bad, they could be crushed.
And we're still fairly low level, so
I think you're level 2,
right?
Maybe, right? So it's like, I have 11 HP. I'm strong.
Doubling that is not a problem.
I have double digits. Yay! And so the whole time they're watching, and as they're trying to make their way through, it doesn't dawn on them at first, as the music is kind of blaring and there's this very eloquent flute being played. It's not until the music kind of stops and there's this kind of route and they hear the name and the voice of Miguel the Magnificent.
Announcing himself to the world.
And the hilarious thing about this is that, and it really doesn't get questioned, which I think is funny, whether it's a bard thing or just the characters were just so fed up with this character coming back, is that he just like appears now in like full getup.
Yeah.
He looks like a bard. He kind of looks like Dandelion from the Witcher series, right?
Very opulent.
Except for all blue instead of the velvet and all that.
Yeah. No crushed velvet.
But playing this like flute, this amazing flute, and to the point where like his notes are actually like coming out and floating above the crowd, and sometimes they burst into water or confetti and all like, to the point where it's like, Miguel never had magic before, but now apparently Miguel does.
Okay.
And it was funny for these two, like out of all, I think, of all the members, these were the two of the I don't give an F people that just saw it and was like, if we don't engage, he won't talk to us, and we won't have to deal with him. And it was kind of that where I as a DM, I was just, I'm just like, my little fish hook is just rolling. I'm clicking. I'm like, come on, bite the bait. Bite the bait. But no,
go talk to him.
Instead, they choose to talk to the leader. They grant him the chieftain. Now, at this point, they've met a few of the chieftains, and they're kind of starting to figure out that they're not all the right in the head. Lady Cree being kind of very lecherous.
They've all got their eccentricities.
And the commander for the Tabaxi being very aggressive and violent and kind of no nonsense. So it's very interesting as they meet this person who is essentially, the way I interpret it was this kind of large, imposing creature that is just covered in mess. As he is just drinking everything that is being brought to him by various kobold servants that are just bringing trays of various meats and foods and drinks.
Wow.
And it takes a while for even Captain V to even get his attention, as they're just ignoring. He just assumes this is another person to bring him something to consume.
Where's my food?
And they're really getting the feel for this kind of change of these elefolk that are just almost the exact opposite of what they've seen from all the other Mirren.
Yeah, these are not the respectful ones that we've met before who are not, I wouldn't say super respectful, but they're at least polite.
Right.
They're not too exuberant or crazy.
Yeah, and it always seems like they're very, rationing. Even with Tobias, it's very rationing.
Yeah.
But this is just so much opulence, so much wealth, so much just kind of waste.
Yeah, I will say the other Mirren definitely are more careful.
Yeah, and to the point too where it seemed as, Captain V is from, other areas. He's from almost a different land, essentially. He's seen a thing or two, but it seems like the Elefolk also, as they are understanding of certain illicit goods that Captain V happens to deal in, and they are more than willing to kind of take whatever, and not even in it for wealth, but just, hey, just give me whatever you have. I'll take whatever you have just right now, I don't care. And it really kind of, as they left this kind of scene, I just remember them staying kind of out of the tent, and both the players just kind of being like, wow,
whoa, yeah.
But the funny thing was, to me, they just kind of had this interaction for them. But for me, it was, again, where poor Miguel left in the dust.
Yeah.
No hooks to be grabbed.
Nope. Left to, sort of share his wares with the Elefolk and try to ply himself off.
Right. And so, unfortunately, poor Miguel, he's out there, and it's such a hard person to get a hold of with him now. We'll have to probably touch down with Luna. I hear she's got a little bit of a special interview because Miguel was unavailable at the moment, being a lot more popular at this point.
He's got a little bit of a sore throat. He's got to keep that singer's voice. But Luna, can you hear us? Hello? Welcome to Traveler Tidings. I'm your host, Luna, here, joined with DM Eguile for a great interview to dig a little deeper into Miguel's creation and purpose. Thank you very much for joining me today, DM Eguile. How are you?
It's a little fun to interview a character.
Right.
Little interview with a character.
Well, I would have loved to have interviewed Miguel, but he's got a little bit of a sore throat, and you know how bards are.
Yeah,
he just won't come out of his tent.
They're great live, but recording, they don't sound as great on a recording.
Right. So, we've given him the night off, but since we have you here, I'd like to gain a little deeper insight into the creation of Miguel and sort of how you created him to fit into the story. Why is he here?
Well, originally it was part of more of the backstory of Bricky.
Miguel, that's unexpected.
Yeah, and a lot of that was meant to be kind of this fun leash, as really the tie was in campaign 2, one of the other players had these children that were with him and latched to him and had all these issues, and so I thought it would be funny to another character who they're kind of butt heads a lot to do the same to him on the next one by having him linked to these two characters. But it was a loose fitting in that I didn't want to necessarily be like, all right, you're handcuffed. But it was funny to see how it would be worked around. And so it was kind of played around him to be this kind of double agent, though. He was supposed to be under some other orders from from another nefarious person, but
some clandestine activities.
Obviously, he was meant to be friends with the party, and that never happened.
Right, because of circumstances.
It's tough, I will say, sometimes, I think it's the same thing as like trying to make friends in the real world.
Right.
In that you sometimes very much flop the intro.
You can try your best, but it might not resonate with the people you're trying to fit in with. And that's always tough. Can you explain to us a little bit of Miguel's personality? He's very flamboyant, very outspoken, and he provides a sort of levity to the story. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny, too, because there are two Miguels, because there was the Miguel prior to the having his tail bitten
eaten,
off by Bogbean, and then it kind of became this issue because obviously with his whole life being shattered, and the way our sessions go, I feel like that's also what ended up happening is that because our sessions are taking one day represents a session, as we have spent maybe in the real world 6 months between sessions, it's only been like 3 days since this poor Miguel has been just horribly wounded.
So he's still traumatized.
Right.
But for us, it's been months.
It feels like all this guy does is cry.
Right.
And so it's a shame to where, this new reveal of him was meant to be like, look, Miguel's fun. Miguel's exciting. He can play music. He has magic. And then it was, hi, hello, bye.
Oh, yeah. Goodbye. You can leave now. Oh, that's so tough. How do you balance that, I suppose, or how do you deal with that? Creating NPCs to be helpful and then having them just sort of tossed to the wayside?
I really think I don't think I'm too unique. I think a lot of DMs do this as well. As you just kind of have a kind of a card, like a stack of decks of all the different NPCs that you might have thought up of. But honestly, the best ones like Gigi, Growlmore, a lot of them came up organically. They were just names I threw out, a character I made on the fly, but it was the spark. They happened to have some feature, some trait that the party liked.
That is true.
They happen to be in the right time at the right moment, and they do something great that the party likes. Or they happen just to be a good spirit and a jokester.
Yeah, and it endeared them to us, and that's just what landed them there.
There's really no one right or wrong way, or one way to really make your characters. Really try a little bit of everything.
It's just the whim of really not even what the players like either, because it's just based on the situation too.
Oh, I've had NPCs that both a character will one moment like them, but then at the same character as the same traits will absolutely despise that other character.
Oh, yes. We've had that multiple times. And that's also tough, creating NPCs that are hated by the players as well.
I will say, if you're trying to make characters that the players will hate, it is very easy. I just go to like the Draco Malfoy school of how to get everyone to hate
the Joffrey voice.
Right. I mean, well, Joffrey, that's going extreme.
A little too far.
I want them to hate, not try to like kill my NPC the moment they see them.
Let's not poison the king quite yet.
But it is always a gamble, and it is one of those things where that's kind of why players interact with so many different characters.
That is very true. Well, thank you so much for such an insightful interview. Really appreciated you joining us today.
Hey, no problem.
Especially since Miguel couldn't be here. But thank you so much. And now back to you, couple of nerds, with the DNDWife and DM Eguile.
Thank you, Luna. I gotta say, it's interesting to be on the other side of that interview for once.
That was fun.
Well, so obviously it's you and me this time, as we don't have a special guest to analyze. But as always in the last bit, we like to just kind of break down a little bit of Q&A between ourselves, both breaking down the DM's perspective and the players, which is always kind of nice when it comes to looking back at some of our favorite sessions. Now, for me, I think the biggest question, and I know for you because you are my lore hog, you are my one that wants to eat up every bit. Same with Eric.
Yep.
But I think you guys were both just like chomping at the bit as here is all this sweet, delicious lore, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Nope. Because we were all at the table, so we're all seeing this unfold, this adventure between V and Drexla, but none of the rest of us are there. We all just get to see it go down, so our players know about it, but our characters have no clue. And when they got back, they didn't say anything.
Right, and I think that was tough because in the grand scheme of like Miguel's grand reveal, I feel like things would have changed if the whole party was there, right?
Yeah, it might have,
because Luna and I think Tobias both didn't necessarily hate Miguel.
No.
And so I think without them being told, we could have seen Miguel perhaps actually have been able to join the party had it not just been the dirty duo that happens to do a lot of the more sneaky things and tends to keep a loose lip sink ships.
Right.
So those two don't say nothing.
No, they tend to keep to themselves, and they're very good about keeping their secrets. So it was tough to have them be the only ones going while the rest of us are just kind of like, oh, there's a lot of information here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for a lot of you guys, this is still very much, new to everyone. So every bit of kind of information. I mean, how did you take to kind of the big juxtaposition between like all the other Mirren and then the Elefolk?
Yeah, it was just like a wow moment. It was one of those moments where you're just a little speechless because you're like, this is what we would talk about in our world with people like just gorge themselves on whatever they want, whether it's food, clothes, anything, right? While there's other people in the world who are starving, who don't have anything, who can't afford, to live in homes and stuff like that. So that's always difficult. And it's definitely a mirror of some of the things that happen in the real world. So I always appreciate that perspective. And it was so interesting to see their just wild opulence too when compared with the rest of the Mirren who were a little more modest.
Yeah, and I think what also really was like the funny part with me was just the idea of like if we could essentially get like a pancake of either V, which did happen in the story. Like he did get smashed between two.
He had to roll for damage,
it. But I was really hoping that Drexla was gonna roll like the nat one, and we were gonna see like a fairy just get like smashed and smeared across, as she's only a foot tall.
Yeah, she's not that big, and I imagine it's just like being in a crowd full of people and being a small person, right? Like you just feel all that pressure on you. I mean, imagine if you're only 1 foot tall, flying through this crush of people, and then you suddenly get stuck between a bunch of them. It's just, I don't know how Drexla didn't freak out, honestly.
Right. And for me, like, I think, like, the biggest thing, and it's very interesting kind of dynamic, and it's a big takeaway for me, is like the idea of like, okay, obviously we all want secrets. Like everybody loves their secrets.
Oh, love them.
But there is kind of like, you have to say things for them to come out, and especially for players that are very into not metagaming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, and so the thing with like Captain V and his like little secret missions and all that kind of stuff, and the player trying to also keep this kind of mysticism behind themselves.
True.
But the problem is by not like revealing, it kind of starts to lurch the story and the development a little bit.
A little bit.
It takes me back to like our second campaign where there was a player who was really kind of the gatekeeper for a large chunk of story and had a lot of proving documents that would prove a lot of things. But because they also kind of wanted this, like, I want to be secretive and I don't want to reveal too much because, really it's like they were afraid if it was so much, the story would be over. And it's like, hey, this is a,
I've got other things.
This is a multi-year campaign. You can give information.
Right.
But what that starts to do is that starts to kind of break it down a little too much. And it's so slow. And then you got players instead thinking, oh, well, this person has nothing. They're not really, but in reality, you're being like, I want to be sneaky and mysterious. Well, it's hard when no one really knows what you're being sneaky and mysterious about.
Right. Now you're just an edgelord.
So if you're being like, oh, well, I'm going to, find ways to still talk, but maybe give little hints and stuff. Not necessarily.
Or accidentally reveal things.
Right. Things like that. Give yourself opportunities to mess up.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I think this is another scene, and if you've heard from a few of these, is that I do like to split the party. And I think that gives better opportunities for Spotlight to be more obvious.
Oh, yeah.
As, breaking into teams of 2 or 3. It really gives players opportunities for different dynamics and interactions without the whole party having this, like, whole toolbox to get themselves through everything.
Right, that is true. Because we are a pretty well-rounded party, I'd like to think. But it can be tough when all 6 of us are there to solve a problem. That's a lot of brains working on an issue. So something that you maybe planned of taking like 3 hours for us to solve takes a half an hour.
Right.
So that's always difficult. And, we do have some questions that I'd like to ask from our listeners. There's just a couple. The first one is how to balance player agency with DM NPC involvement.
I find it's you have to be careful on both ways.
Yeah.
So first is they can't obviously flaunt their power necessarily. Like obviously they're always going to be, but you got to keep the power to be mysterious. Give that feel of like, yeah, this character obviously is strong enough to defend themselves, but they're also not going to be something that's just going to overshadow the players. The way I look at it is have them be specialized in one thing.
Yeah.
If they're really good, so like in essence, Growlmore was a shield. That's all he could do. He wasn't an attacker, he was a defender.
Yeah.
And because of that, then the players have a better idea of how to not only interact with that player, but also not feel like, oh, they're a mage, well, they can do everything I can, and
I guess I'm not needed.
And they don't have to worry about spell slots.
Yeah.
But instead, by making that, it helps kind of balance where the players still kind of have their niches to fill and their roles, and a DM NPC can fill the roles that they perhaps are missing.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. As a player, is it's nice when the DM NPC can fill in a gap that the rest of the players maybe were missing in their group
for like a certain upcoming thing. They happen to be a researcher that knows a little bit more about the location.
Yeah, so it gives us a little bit of a leg up. So I like that. And then the second question we have from our listeners is advice. To provide advice for integrating complex characters like Miguel without derailing the campaign.
It's tough. And I think the idea of it's not necessarily derailing as much as it's taking maybe a new turn.
Okay.
Every opportunity. I think even the very first interaction with Miguel and Bogbean, attacking him brought so much more significance to the story. So like that will never happen again in the same scope and or will be used in a totally different manner in the future.
Good point.
And for a brand new homebrew campaign, first session, brand new player, her first campaign, it makes it so cool because that will always be remembered. And so I don't think it should be the idea of worrying about them derailing unless you are trying to do that.
Gotcha.
And if you're doing that, at that point, you're just making the BBEG. You're not making you're not making an NPC. You're making someone who's going to be
the bad guy.
Who's the antagonist.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. Thank you so much for answering those questions. And if you guys as listeners would like your questions answered, be sure to let us know on Discord or in the comment section. And that wraps up today's episode of the Traveler Chronicles. What a wild ride through the Elefolk's extravagant party and the return of Miguel the Magnificent.
We hope you enjoyed this look into how DM NPCs can bring depth and dynamics into a campaign, whether you're serenading a crowd or steering the story into an unexpected direction.
Remember, adventurers, the story doesn't stop here. Be sure to join us on Discord to share your favorite moments, theories, and questions about tonight's episode.
And if you love what we're doing, don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the Traveler Chronicles. It's the best way to support our podcast and help others discover the chaos of Extrayus.
Until next time, keep rolling those dice, embracing the unexpected, and weaving your own epic tales.
Farewell, and may your adventures be ever extraordinary. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Traveler Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed your journey through the world of Extrayus and the adventures of the travelers themselves. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring the magic of Extrayus to life. Want to be part of the story? Join our community on Discord, where you can chat with us and the travelers themselves. Share your own adventures and dive even deeper into the world of Extrayus. Don't forget to check out our videos on the Couple of Nerds YouTube page for even more content, including behind-the-scenes looks, painting tutorials by DNDWife, and so much more. Thank you for being a part of our adventure. So keep rolling those dice, and may your journeys be filled with wonder and excitement. Till next time, on the next episode of the Traveler Chronicles.